I want to make some quick addendums to last week's episode before we start the show. I want to give a shout out to SerDude's channel on YouTube. I will leave a link in the YouTube show notes. The video that I want to link to is called God of War Ragnarok Characters and Voice Actors. When I was doing research for this episode, trying to pair voice actors with the characters in different games, SerDude's channel was like the most concise one. They also have a whole series if you like a game, like Star Wars, Jedi Survivor I saw on there, and a bunch of games. So they compare the voice actors to their in-game parts. So if you want to go there, I'll put a link to their channel in the show notes. Please support them. We'll get on to the episode. Hello, my name is Joseph Carlson, and this is episode 207 of Gaming with Grief, and I'm calling this episode The Grief of Ragnarok. But I want to remind everyone that this podcast will hit my website, www.gamewithgrief.com, Monday morning at 7 a.m. So please go there and let me know what you think of the show. You can leave a comment right below the SoundCloud link to the show. You can also download the SoundCloud link if you want to there. Please consider also subscribing to the podcast on either Apple iTunes, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music in the podcast section. You can also watch the video version at 7 a.m. on YouTube on this channel, the Game with Group channel. And the video will be available on Spotify as well Monday evening. So if you want to watch the video there, you can subscribe to the Spotify podcast and then watch the video there. They'll hit Monday evening. If you want to let me know what you think of the show, or you want to ask a question, you can write to me at gwgpodfellows@gmail.com, or you can find me on Twitter at JustLittleJoe. So with that, let's get to God of War Ragnarok, or as I'm calling this episode, The Grief of Ragnarok. So I just want to say I made a mistake. Not a major one, but I want to be really transparent. I don't think I did God of War Ragnarok justice. I finished the game last week, and it's been all I've been thinking about for this whole time. I've been watching deep dive videos. I've been, watching lore videos, not only with gameplay mechanics, but like armor sets and like all this stuff that makes the game really special. But I think, when I reviewed God of War 2018, I think I made an assumption, and I only had access to half of Kratos' story. So I think everything I said for God of War 2018, which I still think is good, I think is not invalid, but has definitely changed my opinion of God of War 2018. So, I think, God of War Ragnarok totally changes the way I look at the character of Kratos, and it really gives satisfying answers to kind of the questions that God of War 2018 brought up. And I just want to start out this podcast by saying I will re-spoil God of War 2018 and God of War Ragnarok. So I want to throw that out there before we start the episode proper, that there will be major spoilers for both games, because I'll have to talk about major scenes and themes to explore the episode. If you don't care about spoilers, then you can listen to the carry on and listen to the show. But please go play both these games before you listen to the episode. So let's go. So on episode 189 of Gaming with Grief, I did a deep dive and spoiler cast for God of War 2018. And over the past week, like I said, I've been thinking about it a lot, and I don't think I really did the game justice. So what I've done is I've gone back now, and I'm doing post-game for God of War 2018 as well. And I have some thoughts to share, and I think that it is pretty crazy. I mean, yes, this game deserves all the awards and things it got in 2018, but really it only told half a story. And I'm going to get into why I think some of the things of God of War 2018 were unsatisfying. Doesn't make it a bad game. I'm just going to talk about that. By the way, I did a little bit of research for this, and side note, some of these notes come from a YouTube documentary called Raising Kratos. It was posted on YouTube on May 10th, 2019 from Sony Entertainment. I will link that in the YouTube show notes. That way, if you guys want to watch the documentary, you can watch it. I find it very informative. The documentary starts off with footage from, I believe, David Jaffe and the team for the original God of War games, God of War 1 or 2. I don't know what game they're promoting. I couldn't really see it in the background. Maybe I missed it. And Cory Balrog, who's the director of the 2018 game, they're kind of all sitting around each other talking about what it meant. And I think this is David Jaffe who said this. I want to directly quote. He says, God of War is about a guy who puts everything aside for work and loses his wife and kid. And this is backed up in the art book that I read as well for research. This came out, I'm trying to see, I have notes on the art book, but I'll link the art book. It's on Amazon. It basically came out when the original God of War came out. It just says The Art of God of War. I read it, and there's these passages in between the art that kind of show, where the team was at and stuff like that. But basically, after that, the art book backs this up, what David Jaffe was saying about, a guy gives up everything and loses, a guy who puts everything aside for work and loses his wife and kids. The art book says, there's a passage in the art book that says Kratos had always been a father, but a lot of the team felt that he was always trying to run away from the responsibility of being a father. And God of War 2018 was kind of him trying to embrace it. And then with many of the staff in 2013 coming together to reboot God of War, many of them had become parents. And so they kind of naturally were talking about being parents in the lead up to them rebooting God of War, which I thought was pretty cool. What else? Oh, and originally Atreus in God of War 2018 wasn't Kratos' kid, but they changed that in development because I think they kept talking about more and more about, no, what is it to be a parent? And this really means something. I'll say after playing the game, beating the game years ago, I played a lot of in-game content now. I think this is a pretty correct, they hit the mark with what they were trying to do with the game. I don't think, like I've said before in the past, I don't want a happy, sappy ending for characters, but I think at the God of War 2018, all the characters ended up in a better place than when they started, which I think is great. Even if, the beats were down and there was bad things. The only thing that happened was, again, spoilers for God of War 2018, Freya's child did die, which they address in Ragnarok, which I thought was great. But I guess that leads me to having to talk about God of War Ragnarok, which is the title of the episode. So let's get to that. Like I said, with new games, sorry, I had a technical problem. With new games, a lot of the things you can do is like you finish a game and it says now, go in the world and do what you will to finish, the side missions, stuff like that. And I think that's great. You don't have to do New Game Plus or anything. But there is a great point in Ragnarok where you're basically, it's after Ragnarok and you're picking up the pieces of what has happened. And I think that's really great. I will platinum God of War 2018. I'm working towards that now, and I'm probably going to platinum God of War Ragnarok in my own time. I think the main theme of God of War Ragnarok was to be better. And then when Kratos is talking to Thor at the end, he says that they need to be better for their kids, which I think is kind of the same message, but also very powerful. It's a very powerful thing to tell your children, yes, we need to be better. We need to be better for our children. I think that's crazy and great. And I was kind of blown away by that. It's kind of like one of my favorite scenes in the game. I probably mentioned it in the other spoiler cast I did last week. I don't care. I'm like redoing this. But basically, I think, Kratos walks away from Thor and he could have killed him, but he didn't. And I think that shows a lot of growth. Something I don't think, even though Kratos, I think in God of War 2018 is like coming into being a father, I think he really kind of exemplifies this in God of War Ragnarok, where he's taking the lessons from 2018 and putting them into practice doing this. But there's one thing that I want to talk about. One thing that always kind of, and I have to go back to God of War 2018, one thing that always like kind of left a little itch, just a little thing that felt a little bit off in my brain when I was playing God of War 2018, and that is Spartan Rage. Here's the deal. When Kratos goes into a rage throughout the game, which you can do by building up a meter by beating the crap out of people, It feels fun to beat people up in God of War 2018. It feels fun to have the Leviathan axe and have the tools to beat people up in God of War 2018. And it feels good to be Kratos and beat people up in God of War 2018. But the idea of Spartan Rage, when every scene is about trying to be a good father and tell your son that, you need to be a good person, just didn't set right with me. And a game that is so much about the narrative to me, and I've talked about it before in the show, I love it when games blend together narrative and mechanics. To me, that's amazing. I've talked about it in other games. I won't bring them up over and over again. But to me, that seemed like kind of a weird disconnect between gameplay and narrative. If your whole goal in the narrative of the game is to push the fact that you are a better person and need to be a better person, what kind of example are you setting for your son to just perpetually be beating the crap out of people and doing stuff like that? To me, that is bad. But about halfway through God of War Ragnarok, you were in a fight, and I thought, but in the first half, I thought, crap, we're going to do this all over again, you Spartan Rage. But you're in a fight with a Valkyrie person, like that turns out to be Freya, by the way, because it's like weird because you thought you killed all the Valkyries. Anyway, you start fighting Freya and you realize you get this ability called Valor Rage, which is kind of a weird concept. But basically, instead of going into a rage and beating someone up and healing, which is another thing about Spartan Rage, is you heal while you beat someone up. Again, I don't know how that's a good message. Anyway, with Valor Rage, you actually take a moment and heal. And what I like is the gameplay many times in the narrative, Kratos will stop, tell your son to be ready, take a breath, be prepared. Things like that keep coming up while you're traveling and fighting things. And this is a perfect moment where the narrative and the mechanics come together, which I think is crazy that happens because, again, that doesn't happen a lot. And when it does happen, it's amazing. Totally, I was down on God of War Ragnarok, I think, until this point. And you may say, that's a little strange, Joe. Why would you be down on it? It's because it just kind of follows within the same line from 2018. Hey, we're going to talk about all these really great things about being a better person and being better and all this stuff. We can't do what we want to do anymore, and it just kept following upon that line. And that was frustrating because it made me think we're just doing this over and over again. There's really no message here to the narrative. But then that happens. And immediately I turned around 180 degrees on God of War Ragnarok. Not only do I think the game deserves all the 10 out of 10s it gets, but I think that it really lit into this idea or came into this idea of the narrative and mechanics come together. And I think that is peanut butter and jelly. It is amazing. It is perfect. It is great. I thought that was great. And I'll say this. This is exemplified towards the end of the game, which I mentioned earlier, but I really want to hit on this point. Towards the end of the game, Kratos and Thor are having a rematch. Kratos gets the upper hand, as you do to move the narrative forward, and has the ability to kill Thor. But he says to Thor, Thor says, "We are monsters. This is what we do." And Kratos says, "No more, for the sake of our children." And I thought that was great. It was amazing to me that someone literally had a moment that said, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm not just going to keep killing and killing and killing, and we need to be better and set a better example for our kids. And right before that, Kratos said, your son says that your child is a friend, and so, I consider them a friend, basically. If my son trusts them, I trust them. And I thought that was great. That was the thing. I've watched that scene about 4 times on YouTube, and I can't get enough of it when it happens, So great. To me, this has all just come up to a crescendo of we're going to take narrative and mechanics, blend them together in a way that just totally makes sense and works. And I was just totally, totally blown away. And I got to say, this comes to the last moment of the game, which is basically the last scene in Ragnarok between Atreus and Kratos, which is one of the most heartbreaking scenes that I've ever seen in a game. And I want to read this quote verbatim. After everything the father and son have done together, Atreus realizes that there's more people of his kind. He's a giant. There's more giants out in the world. You guys have survived Ragnarok. And Atreus believes it's up to himself to go find the giants and recover them because they're his people. And he tells Kratos, I have to do it alone. You could tell that Kratos kind of doesn't. I teared up a bit. Kratos kind of has a moment of pause. And then he looks at Loki, who Atreus is Loki, but anyway, Loki embraces the name later. Kratos puts his hand on his heart and says, Loki will go, but Atreus will stay. Holy shit, everybody. That was amazing. And I was blown away by the fact that this game can do something that few games do, which is pack an emotional punch. And, can a game win an award for the best line reading of any time? Just one line? That's it. An award? I don't know. Maybe they should think about it at the Game Awards. So, I think that this is probably, this is a very special game. And I think everybody worked so hard. I want to thank everybody at Sony Santa Monica working so hard on the game and really bringing it over the finish line in an amazing way that we never thought was possible. So my final thoughts are this. I've come to realize that over these episodes, I do think more about grief in the context of games as I should. It's it's the whole reason I started this podcast. But I think, again, the problem that I had with this Spartan Rage mechanic is that God of War 2018 was fixed, quote unquote, by God of War Ragnarok, which isn't too. It's a good game. But again, that feeling I had in my brain of like the Spartan Rage doesn't set right with the rest of the game, totally fixed by Ragnarok. And I just can't believe that it all came together in the way that it did. I believe the game deserves every 10 out of 10 that it's gotten. And, there's during a flashback in the game, specifically talking about grief, that really hit me as well, and I just want to bring this up before the end of the episode, and I want to give a shout-out. Deborah Ann Wool played Frey, who is Kratos' wife, and he has a flashback to when she is marking trees that she wants to be burned down for her cremation. She tells Kratos, we have to plan this, and she says to Kratos, to grieve is to fully love someone. And that was a moment of pause. And I want to shout out this. During the documentary Raising Kratos, the actor Christopher Judge, who plays Kratos, said that God of War 2018 was almost like an apology to his kids, that he felt bad for not being there. He said years later they came to him and said, we understand, Dad. We understand how much you worked. This game, again, grief isn't always about people dying. Sometimes it's about just not connecting with your kids or going through a divorce or anything like that. And God of War takes this idea, and at the end, when Kratos says this to Atreus, this idea that we basically have to walk our own path, blown away. Because I've had that moment with my father when you basically say, I don't want to do what you do, I want to do what I do. And it's sad, but he understood. And even though we were friends and everything, we both basically ended up walking our own way. And so, yeah. Again, one of the things is don't be sorry, be better. They hit on that in the game. I mentioned that in this podcast. It's amazing. God of War Ragnarok, you did it. You did the thing. You moved me. You made me feel amazing. I can't recommend this game enough. And I think, with that, I will say that I think that's it this week. Again, if you want to support me, you can go to www.gamewithgrief.com Monday morning at 7 a.m. When the podcast hits, go there. Let me know what you think of the show. You can leave a comment right below the SoundCloud link. You can also download and listen to the SoundCloud episode right there if you want. You can find me on SoundCloud at Joseph Carlson or Gaming with Grief. You can find me there at those places. You can also subscribe to the podcast on either Amazon Podcast, Google Podcasts, or Apple iTunes, Spotify, of course. And the video goes up on Spotify 7 a.m. Monday morning on Spotify and YouTube channels. Go there, leave me the subscriptions, the likes, all that kind of stuff. And I think with that, we are done. I don't know if you can write to me at gwgpodfellows@gmail.com and, find me on Twitter at JustLittleJoe. So I think with those shout outs, have a good week, and I will talk to you all again next week.